we talk about money and millennials. Bruce Sellery is here, our money guy. I love this topic. Just because millennials, I mean, there's so much buzz around this particular generation. So we're going to talk about what is similar when it comes to money and millennials and what maybe might be a little bit different.
Yes.
Who is a millennial?
They are between the ages of 20 and 36. So you and I are at the top
Basically,
end.
We're millennials.
We're
so
totally I don't remember Little House on the Prairie on television.
What is that?
Maybe in syndication, but I didn't watch it live.
I don't even know what you're saying.
They are the kids who we think of as the babysitter.
Yeah.
And now they're your boss.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. How did this happen? They're 35 years old now.
Right.
So they are grown up, and this is such an important topic for our millennial viewers to watch, but also for their parents.
Yes.
Because in so many different ways, this generation is different. And I've actually partnered with NGen, a consulting firm that focuses exclusively on millennials, to try and look at this consumer insight, how they think and behave, and apply it to money.
I think that's smart because this is a powerful group that is coming up in society. How is the environment different for millennials when it comes to money?
Number one is student debt. So they're graduating with debt somewhere around $27,000. And more of them are going to university, thumbs up, because that's valuable, but is also much more expensive than it was before. So students' debt's huge. Then they come into the workforce, and instead of getting a job with some job security and a defined benefit pension plan, they're in the gig economy. Not all of them, but many of them. So they're on shorter term contracts without the kind of benefits and pensions. So they have to navigate things. Now, the upside to that is attitudinally, they like the flexibility, and there's lots of optimism and experiences that they can have, but it doesn't have the security that our great-grandparents would have had in their career. The third thing that is super relevant, regardless of where you live in this country, though it's exacerbated in the major cities, is real estate. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The boomers and the traditionalists, the older generations, are like, woo, when I sell this house, I'm a millionaire.
Right?
And then we look at our children and think, she is never going to be able, she is going to commute for 6 hours a day, Abby. You know, our kids, they're going to live in Timmins and work in downtown Toronto.
I told my kids they can just live here. Well, they're going to live at my house.
Yeah, and as we were discussing, your culture, you can live.
Stay at home forever.
My culture, 18 years old.
Get out.
Bye-bye. Goodbye. You're no longer allowed to be here. So all that to say that millennials do have a hard time saving. And a lot of that is really valid because of the pressures that they're facing.
Okay, real estate is a tough one. Let's talk about retirement plans, because I know I had it nailed into my head from a very early age. You are going to have to figure out ways to save on your own. Do not rely on a pension. I can only imagine what the reality is now. The
reality is going to be tough, and their expectations are different. So a typical millennial won't think about work, retirement, retire, die. They'll actually think about good life, age 65, good life, and then eventually die. So they will think about, because that's kind of how this is going. We know where this is going. They will think about it in a hybrid way versus a binary way. So they will be combined and together. They'll live longer, they'll have fewer pensions, and also this expense thing that I've talked about makes it so much harder for them to save. The other thing that's really relevant for millennials is the consumer culture in which they were raised and which they live in. So in my day, I would go into Oak Ridge Mall in London, Ontario, and go to the Consumer Distributing Store. Do you remember Consumer Distributing? Oh my gosh!
Yes, the magazine!
The magazine!
Yes!
They have three kinds of Moulinex hand blenders. So exciting.
That's pretty
now
big
today,
deal.
Millennials are faced with so many inputs and so many competing things, and they can get everything at the click of a button on their phone. So consumer culture is hugely different, and the technology that they deal, they wouldn't even call it technology. So you imagine a 20-year-old and you would say, how has technology changed their life? It'd be like asking you and I how the motor car changed our life. Because we just don't remember the horse-drawn carriage days. It's just always been the way that it was.
It's just the way it is. I mean, this is sort of painting a bit of a scary story because there's no financial security, but the wants are bigger than they were in the past. So how do these two things align?
And there's a third thing. Availability of credit.
Right.
So they have less disposable income, more things to want, and more ways to buy it on credit.
Okay.
In addition to this, a value that is really about redefining success. So they're less, and by the way, every single thing that I say completely depends on the individual.
Totally.
So these are broad themes, but they want to create a life with meaning.
Right.
Versus, I will work to make the money. They want to make a difference in the world and have social impact. And so all of those things are very, very difficult. The other point on spending that I would raise is that millennials tend to have an interest in spending on experiences versus things.
Right.
So they would be somewhat less likely to, to buy a car and drive a car. They would rather say, listen, I'm going to spend my money and go to Thailand. The other thing on spending is an expectation around convenience. So you and I both remember the days of consumer distributing and going to the mall and waiting 5 minutes for someone to pick that Moulinex blender to hand to us. A millennial grew up with Amazon Prime, in which anything in the world they wanted one day.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very different thing. They're marrying later. They also have a challenge, and their parents have a challenge on how to think about wealth transfer.
Right.
So some millennials are like, oh yeah, sell that house, now bring it to me. Where is it? I want that money. I mean, I want my parents to be happy and everything, but don't spend it all.
Give me the money.
And then others who aren't actually going to get the money, they think they're going to get the money, but they may not get the money. So there's this enormous amount of wealth transfer to come. And then all that one last little point is all the stuff they have to do is exactly the same. Live within your means, eliminate your credit and save. Like,
so all the same rules as what they have to do in order to have the life that they want to be leading, which is an experiential life with a lot of meaning. They need to have savings.
The law of gravity still applies, unfortunately.
And so RRSPs, is this something millennials should think about?
Yes. Think about, they need to do.
Do it.
Yeah. So it's the paradox of everything is different and everything is the same.
It's really the same.
It's the same.
And all the saving 10% of whatever gig money you have.
Every single segment you and I will do, they need to still do. They just will be embracing
spend it differently.
These attitudes. They're also very optimistic as a generation, which will count for them sometimes negative when they think about retirement. Think it'll just all work out.
Fine.
No, actually, it will not be okay. You need to save. Please.
I love the optimism. I love the changing the world, leaving the world better.
It's wonderful.
So that's great information.